In this video, we're going to talk about commercial kitchen design and equipment in the Army and Navy. Good afternoon, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
That's good to hear. One aspect of commercial kitchen design that's fascinating to me is designing kitchens for Army and Navy use. In particular, I'm talking about Army bases, I'm talking about for the Navy out on their actual ships. Do you have some experience in these places?
I sure do. Yeah.
So what are some of the, tell me, can you give me examples? Obviously it's the Navy and the Army, but some particular places you've worked?
Well, we've done Army bases and Navy bases around the country. Where it differs from a normal restaurant design is that, generally speaking, space is not an issue. They're usually very large facilities. You have all the room in the world to lay out whatever you want to lay out. So that's nice. Generally speaking, you have all the manpower in the world. You know, manpower is not an issue in an Army Navy space. What you don't have is skilled manpower. You don't have career cooks in the back. So laying it out is fairly simple, but the equipment doesn't necessarily have to be the most efficient equipment in the world because they've got time, they've got men. What they don't have is skill, which means you have to have simple equipment. So the things that are back there have to be made in a way that anybody can use it. And that's where, again, technology comes in, where we have now equipment which is programmable. You push this button and you put the chicken in and it comes out whatever menu item you want it to be. The new equipment items solve a lot of these kind of problems.
That makes sense to me. So what kind of numbers are we talking about here? What kind of problem do we have? I mean, how many hundred people do you have to feed at one time, or is it just like 24/7 grazing? How does that work?
Well, generally speaking, it's on a schedule. But although these Army bases are not prisons, I mean, they do have access to, to snacking in between meals. But in general, yeah, you're going to need to feed hundreds of people all at once. And so that means large equipment. That means kettles. That means tilt skillets. That means large steamers, these kinds of equipment where they're going to be able to put out large quantities, limited menu items. There's not going to be a great deal of choices, but it's got to be large quantity and it's got to be all hot at the same time.
That makes sense to me. So how about if we're designing a kitchen, a commercial kitchen for a Navy to get on a boat? I mean, surely there's some issues here when it comes to things moving around.
Well, there's no question. There are different kinds of legs that are meant to be secured. But that's not that difficult. What you do have to consider is this piece of equipment going to even be able to get to the galley area of the kitchen? I mean, there are small access spaces in Navy vessels.
Hatches and so forth.
Exactly. You're not going to be able to get a typical refrigerator or a typical range through a lot of the spaces on a Navy vessel. So, in fact, there are a couple of manufacturers that have Marine Series equipment, and so you would naturally go to them first, and they know what sizes are maximum. And in some cases, these pieces of equipment are meant to be bolted together on site. So if it's a large piece of equipment, it'll be delivered in a couple of pieces. It'll be bolted together on site, and they'll have what they need.
All right, so let's talk about a particular pieces of equipment. You've spoken about, you've got lots of room, you've got lots of people when it comes to a military base, you've got less room and you've got to get through hatches when it comes to the Navy, Army, Navy. How about the Air Force? Is there anything different with them?
Well, an Air Force base is pretty much like an Army base.
You've got to fit everything into the plane?
There's not too much going into the planes, but in general, the food is getting better in these situations. It used to be where, the Army, you saw in the old movies, it was pretty bad food,
Right.
It was
slops.
hardtack on toast.
Yeah.
Doesn't happen anymore. They're creating good meals, appetizing meals for military personnel, and so they want a good choice. They want a nice menu item. They want to be able to offer decent food. So you do have to give them cooking equipment that's going to be able to create a nice variety of menu items and still be able to create a lot of it all at once.
So let's talk about what I imagine is a big deal when it comes to the Army and the Navy and the Air Force. Security. Are there any security issues with these kitchens? And I'm just thinking the Indiana Jones movie where the refrigerator shielded Indy during a nuclear blast? Are there any specially secure? Is there any issues in that direction?
Well, there are refrigerators that that we do specify with what are called seismic legs. These are things that you might want to put in an area where it might be earthquake prone, or like you say, in an area where there might be a violence or something along these lines, where the legs might keep it from collapsing during some kind of an incident. But for the most part, I think they replace their equipment when it goes bad. What I found though is that installation is never really a concern. Generally speaking, when we don't have specification issues with the military, when they call us up and they say they need something at a certain voltage and a certain type of gas, generally they don't make mistakes. They're surprisingly efficient on the other end about knowing what they need.
So they're good engineers.
Yeah,
which you would hope for.
In general, that's the case.
But what I'm hearing is there's no such thing as a bulletproof fridge. That's not a thing.
Not to my knowledge. Not to my knowledge.
All right, terrific. Thank you so much for your insight here. I really appreciate it. If you'd like to find out more about commercial kitchen design or commercial kitchen equipment, please visit us online at culinarydepot.inc.com.